Hello, ako po si Franco Luna, PumaPodcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News, balitang thinking, hindi breaking. In this episode,
No, the Philippines has no intention of rejoining the ICC.
we take a look at the ways the ICC's request to probe the drug war and EJKs may yet play out under or in spite of President Bongbong Marcos. And we ask, what does this mean for all of us?
Ang miniting namin ay dahil sinasabi ngayon na itutuloy ang investigasyon. Sinasabi naman namin may investigasyon naman dito. At patuloy rin naman ang investigasyon. Bakit magkakaroon ng ganon? So anyway.
That's President Marcos speaking with reporters earlier this week. One of the questions for Marcos, when he was candidate and now in his first months as president, has been whether or not he would reverse Duterte's action, taking the Philippines out of the International Criminal Court. Also, membership or not, would his government cooperate with the ICC's investigation? The answer so far? No to returning. But as to cooperating, we will have to see.
The ICC is a very different kind of a court. Kaya pinag-aralan muna, sinabi ko sa inyo, pag-aralan nyo na mabuti yung procedure para tama yung gagawin natin. Kasi hindi natin, siyempre, kailangan baka ma-misinterpret yung ating mga ginagawa. Kaya liwanagin natin kung ano ba talaga ang dapat gawin.
Human rights advocates worry about impunity and the prospects for justice for victims of Duterte's war on drugs, should the Philippines stay out of the ICC. Here's Dr. Aurora Parong, chair of Amnesty International Philippines. She is also co-chair of the Philippine Coalition for the International Criminal Court.
If they just ignore the ICC, then the possibility of the continuing violent war on drugs will occur, which will result to more killings. But they're already considering to question the intervention of the International Criminal Court because of lack of jurisdiction. So that's a sign that it looks like they will not really cooperate.
The government has until September to comment on the ICC's request to investigate in the Philippines. Marcos and Solicitor General Menardo Guevara have laid out two options so far, challenging the ICC's jurisdiction, while also keeping the lines of communication open. Attorney Harry Roque, the former spokesperson for then-President Duterte, he is now Mr. Duterte's private counsel, as well as President Marcos's legal consultant. Mr. Roque stresses on the principle of complementarity. Even if the Philippines were still party to the ICC, complementarity means that the International Tribunal should only be final resort if the Philippine government were unwilling or unable to investigate and prosecute on its own. But beyond issues of jurisdiction and complementarity, lawyer Cristina Conti says it's important first to appreciate everything from the perspective of the victims and their quest for justice. The victims and their survivors are not actually concerned about membership in the ICC per se, but their continuing victimhood.
For these mothers and family members, they have actually, in a way, lost everything already the moment their family members died. Not only have they lost a breadwinner, they've lost yung economic aspect of it, they've also lost some sort of social footing because they have been stigmatized as victims or targets of the war on drugs. Of course, that also affects their standing in the community or actually has isolated them to some extent.
Attorney Cristina Conti represents victims of the drug war as an accredited assistant to the council before the ICC. Attorney Cristina is also a member of Rise Up for Life and for Rights, a coalition of families of victims of the drug war. She says that after understanding the victim's situation and limited options, one can better appreciate why an impartial international mechanism is vital to knowing all that went on during Duterte's war.
We have to remember that these killings are alleged to have been committed by state forces. And this is where our dilemma is. Those who are mandated to investigate cases are the very same ones who are going to be investigated. Kanino ka pupunta para magpaimbestiga ng kaso, 'di ba, sa police. So we're building our cases on our own. This feeling that umpisa pa lang talo ka na, it seeps into every other stage or every other proceedings in the Philippines.
While government has acknowledged up to 7,000 extrajudicial killings that need to be investigated, and Duterte's own Justice Department has admitted to the United Nations that more than half of all drug war operations under Tokhang are questionable, only one drug war killing has ever resulted in a conviction. Human Rights Watch Asia researcher Carlos Conde says that regardless of how or whether the Marcos administration engages, the ICC should and will still be able to investigate.
It will assert its mandate. The ICC does not the answer to the Philippine government. It looks to us now that the Philippine government is fighting this not within the ICC court but within its own court, the court of its own public opinion. They're playing to the crowd. Talo sila sa korte ng ICC, strictly speaking. So they're playing to the crowd. They have to keep in mind the Philippines has been given all the opportunity and the chance to answer the court, to present evidence, to present credible information, and they have failed.
Jacqueline De Guia, Executive Director of the Commission on Human Rights, says the undeniable truth is that domestic remedies have repeatedly fallen short of delivering justice or even just accountability.
We can only say that there is true accountability and there's true cleansings if we see convictions eventually. And if we look at the campaign against drugs, we only have the Kian de los Santos case. And that in turn will also demonstrate that we are serious about pursuing accountability in the country.
Conde says there are broader and longer-term implications beyond the dead ends that drug war victims face.
It's one thing for a government to be limited in its engagement with international accountability mechanisms like ICC. Sabihin na natin na wala silang kakayahan to do that. But for a president to say na walang silbi ang ICC, that encourages impunity. And this is a signal also to future human rights abusers that, hey guys, we can still get away with it. That is pretty scary. What does it tell victims and their families? You will suffer some more.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Franco Luna. This episode was edited by Presh Capistrano and produced by Kat Ventura. If you liked this episode, share it with a friend or two. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. It really helps us get the word out about our show. Maraming salamat po.